And welcome to Vintage Tech 1 Typewriter Carriage String Replacement with your host, Wesley.
Hello everybody and welcome to Vintage Tech 1. Today we're going to be talking about the Smith Corona Skyriter Typewriter, the portable typewriter from the 1940s to the early 50s. Now this typewriter has been with me for quite some time, and I had a question from one of our retro adventurers out there asking how to fix the carriage string. Oh yes, the carriage string is located right underneath your carriage and it is connected to a mainspring over here. It winds up, and that, just like a portable pocket ruler to measure things, has the same spring and string system going on it. So if that snaps off, if you're lucky enough and it comes off from your carriage up here, there's just a thing where you have to take the back panel off, and I'll show you in a moment. If it is stuck and it doesn't want to progress, these models do not have a lock mechanism to hold down the carriage, so that means we got to get into fixing. What you will need is a short screwdriver. You'll need a long screwdriver. You really could do good with just a small, short, flathead screwdriver. If you'd like to make sure the knot at the end doesn't ever come off again when you put it through the eye hole, as we're going to do in a few minutes, you may want to use some super glue. But make sure you have gloves or you wash your hands right away, because that can stay on your hands for about a week's time. And you'll need rubber bands. Why rubber bands? Because we're going to use this to wind up the mainspring on the bottom of the carriage. Now this is very important. If you have a rubber band, you can use a really thick one, you can use a little thin one, but you may not want to use a very long one, because if you use a long one, you're going to be stretching out super far. So a short one would be fine. Probably even the ones you get on your vegetables would work just as well for binding celery. So you can use that, and you're going to put it over the wheel, and then we're going to stretch and eventually wind it back up and attach that pesky loose string. If you need to redo the whole string, fishing line works really great, I was told. And I'll put some links down below to some other places where you can find some more info on your machine. Well, let's look at the carriage. Gotta move this over here. Okay, so how are we gonna get this apart? This is so simple. Okay, first, make sure that the back part is facing you of your machine. It does have a lovely front though, I must admit that. So, let's start off by explaining a few basics. You will need either a very long or a somewhat long flathead screwdriver. All the screws that I've seen on here are all flathead screwdriver based. You will also need rubber bands to help wind up the mainspring. And if you want to make sure that string doesn't ever move again from the end, you're going to put some super glue on it. But be careful, I'll show you how to do that. Super glue is optional, you could just tie a knot and put it on. So let's get to it. I'm going to flip our machine around, and we're going to move our carriage using the carriage release button, which is right over here on the left hand side. If you face it, put your hand over here, make sure you're holding it, and you're going to just slide it over gently. Now, since this is a bit far down, I'm going to use this longer screwdriver, and I'm going to counterclockwise unscrew it. My screwdrivers happen to be magnetized because I've magnetized them for easy access for me. If it's not magnetized, that's alright. You can just pick out the screw. So I have the screw here. The most common you'll find is just a screw. I added a washer to space it just a bit because it was starting to go into the main body underneath, which I'll show you right now. You see those bumps right here? Here and here, and hello. Those are caused by the screws being driven in a little bit too deep over the years. And I'm always screwing this back in because as I travel, it gets a little bit loose and I have to realign the body with the holes. Okay, we got one screw down on the far left, and you can see it's right down in that area. Sorry. Now, see right here in between this mechanism,
there is that space. That's where I got the screw from. We're going to go and we're going to put our hand over here. We're going to hold on to the release. We're going to slide it all the way over. And we're going to now go off to the right hand side. So on the right hand side of our machine, there is the obvious place right here. That right there is the screw you want to take out. Bam. So you're just going to do it counterclockwise and unscrew it. Turn it around so we can all see. You're going to put your hand over there and you're going to lift from the back right over here. So find a nice spot to grab. If you want, just move your spacebar a little bit over and you can grab underneath. The carriage a little bit over and you can grab underneath right there. You can actually just pull it out this way if it's easier for you. I put my hand usually over here sometimes and I gotta wedge that out. There we go. Put this gently on the table. Now this is the whole bottom section of your machine. Easy, isn't it? I always seem to mess up on the felt just a bit. I just push that back down. If your machine smells really funny, chances are the felt might be the one containing all that smoke smell. It may also get into the paint itself, but let's say you're going to replace your felt at some point. You can get, I think this is about not quite an inch, a ½ inch or less thickness of felt. And if you do, make sure that you don't put any felt within this region area because the keys are very sensitive and if it's too thick it won't register correctly. But everything else you can coat this whole thing except for the screw holes right here and here, and you probably don't want to cover up these little rubber feet areas. And also if you were going to replace the rubber feet, this would be a great time, especially if you were just going to put some new rubber feet in. You can just tack it onto there. You got the ones that screw in or so. I haven't ever replaced these, so I don't have to worry about that. Now on the front of the machine where it locks in, this is really neat. They have a little area which is sort of like an eye hole in itself. The machine locks into this area, you see? That's the front part of your machine. Now that's this right here, where my pinky's at. That locks into there and it holds the machine in the case. You gotta be careful with that. Let's move this off to the side so we can get to the main piece. Alright, we've done it. We disassembled the machine. We now have it wonderfully displayed. Let's flip it over and we will show you some of the nice features. Gently put it down. There we go. Now you can see here there are some wonderful things. We have is the mainspring. The mainspring goes, and there's a string that goes around it that carries all the way over onto your spacebar. Now this is very, very, very important not to release your spacebar while it's like this, because if you do, you can accidentally smack your hand or pinch it. If you do, make sure you have someone helping you or that your machine is safely secured all the way to the side. You can release the spacebar, but make sure you're pushing pressure this way with your left hand. And then slowly progress. There you go. You did a good job. Now let's look at what we have here. We have the mainspring, and this right here, right behind it, there are a set of gears. Those teeth gears are also known as escapement wheel. Now the escapement wheel helps it move and progress easily down the line. If you were to take this off, I did attempt it and I did do it, but I don't recommend taking off the casing for the gears. But for demonstration purposes, I am going to remove the cover of this and show you how the gears look. Don't try this at home. It can be very, very, very dangerous. There we go. Now if we're looking here, you can see the main gear is just a spring, just like the inside of a tape measure or the inside of an old phonograph mainspring, and on the back has the escapements. And it has a pin that goes right through, and it works just like any other pin. It helps keep it so that it basically rotates. That's the main axis. Now if you could put this back on, make sure that this is up if you were to do that. But just for demonstration purposes, I did that. And now I'll give me a moment as I try to put it back on. In the worst case scenario, the spring probably would pop out, and that's not very nice. Alright, so I've come back and I have the giant ruler. This goes by inches, so we will see from here to here. This is 13 inches. I would say 13 and a half to probably 14 was the original design, because I did lose some on each end last time I did this. So I would say 14 inches would be fantastic. 13 and a half to 14 inches, as you can see here. Now, the tricky part of getting this string to attach properly, because you can't put it under the chassis, under here, otherwise we'll just eventually eat this away. And it'll just slide and tear on these on the metal over here. What you have to do is I'm going to move this booklet away so it doesn't break it. You're going to have to take and undo 2 screws in the back. Now this is the second part if you need to completely change the whole thing. So I'm going to flip it around carefully. Now, remember, we've got to have our hand over here, and the release, we push the release, and we can go over there. Alright everyone. If you're still sticking around with this, awesome. This is a lengthy project, but eventually it will be done. Now as you can see in the back, there are some holes in the chassis. I just call the whole case the chassis. You have here and here, you don't want to bother with those. Sorry, I dropped the ruler. What you want to do is you may want to leave this alone. What you really want to get to is the one on the far left. So I'm going to take this, and you're not going to unscrew it all the way, just partially. So relieve some pressure, probably 2 little turns. You're going to lift this part up because it slides on. And you see how it moves like that? So we're going to lift that just a bit. We're going to take over here, we're going to get a flathead, we're going to wedge it in between this, and we're going to pop this out, and look how it pops out right there. Now what we can do is we can hold this, and we're going to wedge this up. So we're going to wedge it up like that. So this goes into here. This is a set little bump, and this goes into the groove. This has little holding teeth, as you can see right here. These little, oops, little holding teeth go right inside, and it holds it nicely. So it just goes like that onto it, just like this actually. So it holds down so it'll stay nice and snug. Now, right down here on the far left, there's a mini hole. This hole is so small. We're going to zoom in on that. Oh, sorry, too close. We're going to zoom in on that. Now what you're going to want to do is you're going to tie an end, a knot end, on your new piece of rope. Or if you're using fishing line, I'd recommend tying it around like so. You're going to get it, you're going to just tie it around like this, tie it like that around, and just do another knot. Since this still has the original and it's in pretty good shape, I'm just tying a knot at the end. I don't know which gauge string they used. I know this is very fine strands. So what I had done is I took some super glue, and this is where rubber gloves or being very careful with super glue comes in handy as well. And take this off because it gets on everything. You're going to just take and you're going to squeeze a little dab on there. You're going to let it dry for a few minutes, and then you can continue on with your work.
You don't want to pull it all the way close while it's drying because you don't want it stuck to the metal. That's where just natural tension comes in. Alright, let's say you strung it through. It's just like doing an eye on a needle or even a hole in your shoelace. So just string it through, you pull it, and good. Put this down, pull it down. Then we're going to take this, and this actually holds what is known as the margin. Let's see, I got the fancy term here. The tabular mechanism. So the tabular mechanism is also the margin release over here. And this is the margin scale for your paper width, or your setting guides as some call it. You're going to push this. Now you see close how there's just a little gap. You're going to take that and it's going to slide right on top and go right in. So you just take that, push it a bit, slide it on, push that up a little, it pops into place. Now you take your screwdriver and you put it in and you fill it so you get a nice grip, and you don't want to tighten it too much. Just fill it, wiggle, tighten, and then just as snug as it can be. Don't over tighten it because you could strip the edge of the screw like you can see down here. This one got a little bit stripped when I tried to fix something last time, but it does work fine. And this is your release tab, so you can roll the carriage back and forth, or the carriage release is what it's called, I'm sorry. Oh yeah, and I forgot, there's the, if you're looking for the serial number or info on your typewriter, let's see if we can get the shadow out of there. Your typewriter information is located right down here in this area. This one is a 2Y35558. Alright, and I'm back. I went to the kitchen and got a birthday candle. Why a birthday candle, you may ask? Well, any candle will work. What you're going to do is you're going to go along and wind up the string, even though it's frayed on the end. You're going to take that candle wax and you're going to go over it, wind it up again, go over it. So you coat it with wax. Now wax is good because it will hold it in place too. So it's not just regular string being sliding inside there. Alright, since we got a nice little tip on there, and it's yellowed already, we're going to wind this up, once again counterclockwise. That's good. Now let me try the thicker one, because I think it might be better. More grip to it, more bite. This would be about the size of when you would get your celery on. And it just goes right on here. It takes some time, but in the end it is way worth it. And if you get frustrated with this, you know what, just take a little bit of time and relax. You don't have to do this right away. You can just take some time. So about that much of this string is going to go right inside this section over here. Okay. Now, you see there's a bit of a gap, and if I do put my small screwdriver in here, I wouldn't recommend doing this, but I have it nice and tensed up. You could probably take the tip of a pencil, so if it does break, you're okay. That has a nice gap in there. Alright, and you can also take this and put it in, and look, so about 1/2 inch to 1 inch, probably about that much is good. I'm going to put that inside here because naturally it's going to wind up this way. So we're going to put that down, but I would go behind the rubber band and under and over, put this down, and slowly but carefully unwind it. Now the reason I put it under the rubber band and the other way is because it'll wind up, and then you don't have to worry about your rubber band having to cut it off, because you can take your rubber band off right there. See how easy that was? That was awesome. I've done that, attempted it. Ooh, this is the second attempt. The first attempt wasn't that easy. Now the main concern is, will it still work? And that is the concern we want to know. So what we're going to do now is I'm going to move this over. I'm going to flip this over gently onto here. Remove the rubber band. Okay, here's the test. Let's move it. Let's see. Cross our fingers.
I'm gonna lift it up a bit because it's not really used to being on that. So. Oh, there we go. Look at that. And if you think it might be 2/10, then what you can do, if you think it's wound up too much, this part's correct, so it's wound up properly. But if you think it's wound up too much, you're going to take that rubber band again, and you're going to hold it carefully. You're going to hold this, you're going to lift this up, put it on this again, and you're going to just have to unwind it like you did winding it up. And then you're going to take this string right here. So if you think it's too tensed, you're going to wind it up like this, and you can readjust the string. You can add a longer piece or so. Now it's quite easy to put it in the case. It goes in the same way it came out. I set it inside the case by it with itself, so there we go. Now, I'm going to move my tools to the side. I'm going to put this down. And now you're going to take your lovely machine, lift it up gently, and you're going to set it in at an angle. It's going to go through this side. And remember, don't lift from the space key. Use the metal holding parts down here, which are located here on this side and over here on the other side. So you're going to hold that, guide it in. And you also want to make sure that those little pointed teeth that we talked about in the beginning go through those little holes. So I make sure it slides in nicely as well. And you don't, if it happens that your space bar ends up here, up, you just gotta go back and push it down. And for some reason, if your space bar just keeps on hitting the metal, you may not have the original rubber parts that are in there. So like what I did is I took and I shaved some felt and I put it in over here. And then there's the original rubber piece that's a C curve right here. And that's where the space bar parts sit nicely in there. Alright, I'm gonna hold that down, put that in. It's a little cumbersome, but you know what? After you've managed to do this, you have succeeded and you have done great. And bam, just lift the lid up. Try to push that forward from the back end. Push the lid down. It should go in nicely. And all you got to do is replace the screws. Now to put the screws back in, it's best to have the screws that went onto each side. So this was on the right side. So the right side, we'll start with that because it's the easiest one. And it'll help us align the other side later. So we're going to screw that in gently. And don't want to really tighten it up too much. Leave it loose a bit so it snugs in because we're going to line it up on the other side. Now remember, put your hand over here. Hold the release bar. Slide it over. You're going to take your other screw. And I have a washer on mine now. See? Right here it doesn't quite line up properly. And that's right around here. It's a little tricky. So I'm going to put that here. I'm going to move my hand around. There we go. Move that up a bit. And since mine's magnetized, it will be a little tricky, but I think it should work. Let's see if I can get that going in there. You don't want to pull this spring out because it's a pain in the butt to put back in. But you'll do good. I know you will. Ooh. Alright, just guide it in. If you need to go backwards with the screwdriver, you can until you feel it pop into a hole. And then you can just go forward and yet tighten it up. Like I said, the reason I use washers here is because the machine always gets wiggly wobbly. So I just use that and I don't want it to pierce through the bottom. Now you slide the bar all the way over and we go to the one that's loose a little bit and we just tighten that up till it's nice and snug. And there you have it.
you have successfully changed the entire carriage string for your Smith Corona Skyriter. Give yourself a round of applause, you did fantastic. And now you have a lovely machine that will continuously type for years to come. That's it. In fact, just to show you that it works, I'm going to put my instruction pieces in here. Lift that up, put it down. And we're going to say our final goodbyes. Because remember, everybody, to keep it retro. Bam! Yeah, I do need to get some ink. But other than that, have a wonderful day, everyone. Thank you all from Vintage Tech 1. Goodbye, and keep it retro. And that is the end. Remember, everyone, have a wonderful day. You are wonderful, and take care.